Awesome. I'm now recording. Well, thank you all for coming to the Semester 2 course rep training. Before we begin, I'd like to start with the acknowledgement of country. So we acknowledge the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people as the traditional custodians of the land upon which the ANU stands and upon which the work that we would do if we were in person usually occurs, and that's the land upon which I am zooming in from today. I encourage you all to find out the names of the peoples of the lands that you might be on at the moment, so that way you can pay respects appropriately there. And to also understand that the work that we're doing as course reps should be to further reconciliation and further the well-being of Indigenous peoples across Australia as best as we can as academics and scholars. And we acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded and that we live on stolen land. So there's a couple of questions. So yeah, Michael, so you will be able to get access to the recording through when I post it online, which will be both on the Facebook page and on the ANUSA website. So I can give you the link to the website now, which is just here. This is where you'll be able to find everything in future to do with course reps. You'll also find the course rep guidebook that is basically has a lot of what I'll be talking about today. I'll be adding in a few bits that aren't in there. It's a good opportunity to ask me questions and to find more about what you can and can't expect in your role. It is worth noting that it is particularly the circumstances around what we do are changing all the time since in the last 2 years. So you might have a lot of questions about what to do or not do. And that's great. This is the space for that. But I'll give a pretty, I'll try and be relatively quick. It'll be a rundown of what a course representative does, and then a rundown of how ANUSA can help you. I guess now's a good time to mention that my name is Christian, obviously. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the ANUSA Vice President this year. And that means that, generally speaking, I'm one of the people who's the point of contact for any major academic issues that you might have. So yeah, if there are questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, but also I'll be able to give better answers right at the end. So just hold on to them till then if you're willing to wait. I know they said this would go from 6 till 8 p.m. I think it will go much less long. We should be done within 30 or 40 minutes at most in terms of content, and then just however many questions people want to ask and stick around for. So yeah, that's pretty much everything. I think we've got most of the people who will probably be joining us today. And again, the handbook and this recording will be going up, so you can watch it back later. You can read a lot of this information, but not all of it. So always good to come to these trainings to learn a bit about what we do. So yeah, main thing is, for where to start is that my name is Christian, and along with Madhu, who's the president this year, we're the two main representatives of undergraduate students at the ANU. I'm just going to pop our emails. Oh, that did not work. So that's Madhu's email, the president of ANUSA, and that is my email for future reference. So we're just really good points of contact if you have major academic issues in the future. I'll go through what those are, but we're two of the most important contacts that you will have. So couple of key things that you need to learn about. So the first one is we can start with what a course representative is. A course representative is essentially part of the ANU's overall strategic plan to work with student unions such as ANUSA and PASA, which is the postgraduate wing, sort of the postgraduate organization here at ANU. And together we are the people that the points of contact for the issues that you might engage in. A course representative is a person that just sits within the one course and that you help represent the students within that course for any small academic issues, sort of a bit of an alarm system or warning system for any issues that could be coming up and could sort of escalate. So course reps are really important. They do a couple of things. They, first of all, offer support to people within the class. Second of all, they give a voice to everyone within the class. They are a point of contact. They're someone that can advocate for students. And then finally, your role will be to be a point of consultation if there are issues within your course where your people that we can turn to and ask questions about how it is and isn't functioning and get a bit of a better idea. There's a lot of benefits to being a course representative. It's a great opportunity to get involved, to learn a bit about how ANUSA works, how the ANU works, learn how you can have an impact on your courses and on academic outcomes at the ANU. So beyond that, there are a couple of key things that you should, sorry, I'm just looking through my notes here. I think now's a good time then to talk about where you all fit into the wider part of the ANU's academic services and whatnot. ANUSA is the ANU Students Association. And at ANUSA, what we have is we have the vice president and president, we have other staff members and elected student representatives, and we represent all of the students to the ANU. But between us and that highest level where we meet with vice chancellors and deputy vice chancellors, there's a whole bunch of work that's done at the college level with deans, assistant deans of education, and for all of you, most relevantly, course conveners. So importantly, ANUSA is responsible for advocating and furthering the interests of our members to the university. But beyond that, our advocacy extends far further into each college, and we have something called a college representative. So a college representative is someone that is basically in charge of advocating and talking about the issues that are turning up in that entire college, and it's college-wide. And I'm just popping those emails in the chat as well for you all to look at. So you'll be able to see that there's six of them, six colleges. SA.Science is for the joint colleges of science, so science and health and medicine. And basically that's 2 elected student representatives for each of these colleges, and that those are the people that when you all have an issue, they're who you go to talk about them. So I'll explain what those issues can look like, but it's really important to understand where you all fit within the broader scheme of advocacy and academics at the ANU. Essentially, you are one of the people where we don't have college representatives that can be in every course ever. It's just not possible. So you're the course reps that are in every course, and you escalate things that you can't solve with a simple conversation and some other tools that we can give you. You escalate them up to those emails that I'm giving you. And if they can't solve it, then you take it up with the president or vice president. So that's myself, or Madhu, the president. So now I've explained that, I can go into a little bit of detail around what kinds of issues you might be facing and how you can work to deal with them. So the first step to be a good course representative is to understand how to connect with the people that you're meant to be representing. So specifically, that means that you need to make sure that you are visible within the cohort to everyone. The easiest way to do that is that you should be giving your uni IDs, emails to the course convener, and that they can just pop those on the Wattle page. That way students can easily access them. They can also do Wattle posts, they can also do emails, something like that. The course convener should be the person organizing this and should be in contact with you and what you are comfortable with doing. Generally, it is an expectation that it will be the case that if you sign up for this, that you'll have to use your uni ID to talk about these things. And that's something that the rules will be tightened on for next year. So something to be conscious of. Some other easy things you can do is it's best to be approachable and nice, basically, in how you deal with your fellow students, classmates, and with the course convener. It's worth noting that everyone's generally trying their best, and that you don't need to get into a big fight with your course convener, that most of what you might want to be solved can be done by just being simply nice and kind and approachable with your other classmates and with the course convener. And that brings to the last point, which is that it is important you keep in touch with your course convener, keeping them informed about what is working and what isn't working in the course is really important. That's something that they should also be reaching out to you with, but don't be afraid to reach out to them as well at the same time. And every time you do talk to them, I think it's good to often, tell them what you do like and what you don't like about how things are working in the course. I'll just put that person on mute. Just make sure you are keeping yourselves on mute, please. Someone's asked me a great question, which is it mandatory that a course has a course rep? So it is mandatory with a few specific exceptions that every course has a course rep. There are some conveners that prefer other methods. For this semester, that is still something that is generally allowed. For coming semesters, there's actually been a big policy change at the overall academic level of ANU, and that means that there'll be a lot more stringent rules and that a lot more courses will be doing it. So if a course hasn't elected one by week 4, then you're more than welcome to reach out to your course convener and ask if they will be having a course rep. They don't have to have one, but if they don't have one, what they do have to do is have an alternative feedback mechanism in place that is easily accessible to all students. So if you're having any problems with the course convener who's not putting any feedback mechanism in place, then please let me know. And that's something that I can help you with because that is quite serious. So thank you for that question. I hope that explains it. It's a bit of a gray area still, but if you let me know, we can sort out specific problems and solutions to that. Other things is just making sure that you're listening and that you're avoiding overall getting too involved in the work of being a course rep. You don't need to fix the course if there's major problems. You don't need to do everything. You're just a person that can communicate issues on behalf of your class to a course convener, just an appointed student representative, basically. And that is the main thing that you should be focused on. So beyond that, in terms of the kinds of things that you can be focused on, there's a couple of things that often come up and that it's relatively easy for you to bring up with a course convener and hopefully get solved. So I can go through some of them now. So basically it will be something small. For example, lecture recordings is a classic one. All lectures, all learning material is meant to be recorded at the moment, and the course convener is meant to place those recordings on Waddle or something else without really many exceptions at all, unless there's, unless it's a tutorial, in which case they'll only have to make accessible the tutorials themselves. So if a course convener isn't doing that, make sure you raise that with them. You say that, you say, are these recordings out, that kind of thing. Course conveners, if they do not respond, they don't want to, if they say something like they're not going to, that's when you can escalate that issue up the chain, and our college representatives will be able to help you sort that out with the assistant deans and deans of education. Other things that happen, course outlines. Course outlines are only meant to be altered in the first week of the semester. So people are meant to have time to see what those changes are and then be able to accept the rest of their semester. It is worth noting that a lot of what happened in the last week will significantly affect people's ability, course conveners' abilities to follow through on what they might have laid out originally. For example, in any in-person requirements, those kinds of things, some course conveners may already be moving some assessments around to give people more time. It is worth noting that as long as the changes that course conveners are bringing in are helpful to students, that's something that you can probably let be, as long as it's very well communicated to students. If there is a change and it's negatively affecting students, such as there was an assignment due in week 5 and now they've moved it forward a week because of the lockdown or because they just don't care about the lockdown, that's something that you can definitely raise with the course convener and then also escalate. So make sure you keep an eye out for those kinds of things. At the same time, and in a similar vein, course workload is incredibly important, particularly for the coming semester. This is where you can be a little bit more general and rely less on specific policies, but talk to the course convener about what a realistic workload is and is not for the learning outcomes that are expected. There are the average amount of time that course conveners should be giving students work on is about 10 hours worth of work and lectures and tutorials combined per week. So that's all readings, assignments, preparation, everything is on average meant to be about 10 hours according to the ANU. So if you're spending 25 hours on a single course, that's where maybe you should be a little bit worried. You should be wondering if, a single 6-unit course is really is really having a fair and balanced workload. And that's something that you can raise with your course convener. And then again, you can escalate that up the chain to our course reps. So that's some of the key things. There's some other things, such as differences in assessment tasks and following through on educational access programs, or education access plans. So that's an EAP. So that's the way that students who are living with disabilities, who have disadvantages in certain ways in their lives, are able to get an EAP. And that means that they'll be able to have changes made to their assessments as needed. Similarly, if students in your class don't all speak English, then it's often common that a different style of assessment task can be requested. Sorry, someone is calling me. Sorry about that, everyone. Sorry, just going to tell someone I'm in a meeting. In terms of the other course rep issues that could occur, is the other major one is feedback. So feedback has to occur in a timely fashion. That means that you have to have received some feedback of some kind before 50% of the teaching period has passed. That doesn't mean it has to be feedback on an assessment that counts towards your final grade, but it does mean that you would have had to have at least completed, say, a quiz and then gotten feedback on that quiz before the end of week 6. So that's a pretty clear guideline, making sure that conveners are following through on that. So that way they're giving feedback actively to students before halfway through the course. So that way they're able to understand where the issues are and aren't for those issues. So in terms of other things is that teaching methods are often something that can be a bit of a problem for different students. So there could be tutors, there could be lecturers, there could be people that you don't think are teaching in a way that is particularly helpful. Noting that some styles of teaching are unique and that we don't need to have all of them the same, and that they can have a personal element based on the tutor. It is worth noting that if you are finding particular teaching methods to be particularly difficult in your learning outcomes, in a student's learning outcomes, that's something as well that you should bring up directly with the course coordinator. Importantly, that's something you need to bring up directly with them. And more broadly, it's worth noting at this point that if you do have issues with tutors and whatnot, as a course rep, the only point of contact you should be having is with the course convener. You shouldn't be going directly to the tutor or to the lecturer. It should always just be the course convener, as they're the person that you are meant to be talking to directly. So I got a question, which is, when I say feedback, do I mean on the course or on assessments students have submitted? I mean feedback from the teacher, from the lecturer, to the students on a piece of work that they've submitted. So it can be, but doesn't have to be an assessment. So I hope that answers that person's question. They can let me know if that doesn't. Yeah. Yeah, and then other things are you are able to raise the fact that some assessment you're doing might not be entirely relevant to the coursework that you're meant to be completing, the learning outcomes. So if you feel like the work you're doing is not contributing at all to the overall purpose of the course, then that's something you can definitely raise. Some students may approach you with individual issues. This could be students who are saying that they have a particular issue and that they would like support. It is worth noting that you are not responsible, nor should you be the person who deals with individual students' issues. You're meant to deal with issues that apply to everyone. So if a convener has done something that is unfair to one student, that is something that you don't personally handle with the convener. That's something that you tell this person, here is a list of other contacts that you can work with. So for advocacy issues, that's probably me. That's sa.vicepresident, which I put in the chat before. And then the other thing is this email, which is sa.assistance. So we have 2 student assistance officers that work full-time at ANUSA, and these are people that specialize in knowing the ins and outs of all ANU policies. These are 2 really skilled, really good people worth talking to if someone does have an issue. So if you or a student you know is going through specific issues, make sure you get them to contact that email, as they'll be able to help them handle, say, a plagiarism case, or be able to help them, say, having a specific this convener is refusing to have any changes to an assessment task despite the presence of an EAP. As long as the convener is doing something that affects only one person or only a very small group of people, then you deal with that by palming it off to our student assistance team, who are equipped to deal with that. But if it's something that affects everyone in the course, then make sure that then that's your point of contact and that's your job to deal with. And assuming it doesn't need to be raised in a further fashion. So in terms of other things, you'll have course rep staff meetings, which are important opportunities to share your communications and your thoughts with courses with Associate Deans of Education. So the Associate Deans of Education should be reaching out to you at some point to talk to every course rep within your college. It's something that used to be like a lunch. That's probably just going to be a Zoom at the moment because of COVID. But essentially, there'll be an agenda. There'll be some kind of a discussion beforehand around what can and can't be spoken about and what's expected at this meeting. It's worth noting you should read the agenda carefully, that you should raise any issues that you want raised at that point before the meeting. And yeah, the Assistant Dean of Education should be in contact around what that looks like. And that's also a good point to talk about other issues in the course, such as CELTs, such as course evaluations not going well, such as overall dissatisfaction in the cohort. So make sure, there's a lot of tips here about how to make sure that you attend that meeting and engage in it in good faith and make sure you're prepared for that. I would suggest reading that bit on the course rep handbook. I won't go into details. It's not particularly important, but it is worth a read, particularly if you're relatively new to this. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, the method by which you will be communicated with will be via email. And that's why it's so important that students are able to contact you, preferably by a course convener having your contact details, specifically just your uni ID email. So that way they can, a student can contact you. If you do receive an email, it's worth noting that anything they do say, you should generally take as generally confidential unless the student says otherwise. And you don't need to raise a specific person when you do talk to a course convener. It's good to, if it is a general issue, to talk about the issue in a generalized fashion. Don't say that one student has said this, say that this is a concern that students are having. So it's small tips like that that you should be sort of thinking about and aware of to make sure that you do something like that. So I've had some questions come through. So if a student is struggling to contact a convener with a request such as an extension, that is something that is generally an individual issue. If a number of students are struggling with it, then you can raise the issue with them and say that this is something that we've had a common problem with. It is worth noting that some colleges have centralized extension forms now. So you should always check if the college that you are at has a centralized extension form, and that might be the best way to handle those kinds of issues. But more generally, if the course convener is not easily contactable, then you can raise that yourself as a course rep, or you can bring that to me and I will help you with that. Someone has asked if office hours from lecturers are mandatory. I don't believe the office hours themselves are mandatory, but I do believe having easy contact with students is. I think at least the course convener should be having that, but if that is an issue, please let me know, because I'll be able to investigate whether or not they should or shouldn't. I'm sorry, I don't know that policy myself. And someone asked, if a student reaches out to you with a general issue and it applies to everyone, then should you survey other students before reporting the issue to your convener? No, you don't have to. If you can tell by the nature of it that it is a general issue, then you're absolutely able to just raise that with the course convener. If everyone has suffered the same setback from, say, an assessment being moved around, then that's something you can just raise it directly. Other questions are coming through. if someone is having, generally contacting a convener, then raise that with me or with the college representatives, and they'll be able to go around the course convener to the assistant dean, and they'll be able to get a response through that way. So how do we tell the lecturer that their style of teaching is not working with the cohort without sounding rude to them? I think that's a great question, and a really tough one. I think it's worth noting that, remembering that lecturers are human too, and that they're just people and they're just trying their best. Generally speaking, I would recommend approaching it in one of the regular sessions that you should be having with them, and focusing very much on specific issues and specific improvements, as well as making sure to note what is working. So instead of saying that, overall, I don't think that you're a good lecturer, you should think about what are the specific changes that might be needed. So some examples could be, you wish they would give an outline of what the lecture is going to look like. You wish that they would headline when they move between different topics within a lecture. You would like to see them give more examples at various points because they don't give any examples. So trying to think of those specific types of things is generally the best way to do that without sounding rude, and focusing on improvements and suggestions more than criticisms. So it's a bit of a learning curve sometimes. There's no easy answer, but it's a good way to improve your people skills and improve your own communication. So again, the course handbook does have a lot of tips on that. There's an ABCD of effective feedback, which I'll go into in a second, actually. But that gives some further tips on how to manage that specific and sort of depersonalized feedback. If there is a class rep email address, then yes, you should get access to it. It's worth noting that the ANU will be phasing those out probably by the beginning of next year. I'll talk again about some of the changes that are coming through at the end of this conversation. I'll just quickly speak about the effective feedback strategies, because I think that's a great question. So it's sort of an A, B, C, D, E. So the A is for having accurate feedback, so making sure that you are accurately communicating the issues you have with the course. And B is for balance, so making sure that you balance the feedback and that you also have an understanding of what a balanced course should look like. So avoiding very large assessments, say, at one particular point, and trying to have some form of balance throughout the course is helpful. C is for constructive. Ensure you're always constructive with your feedback. And D is in some ways the most important, which is depersonalize it. You don't need to speak about a specific person and say that they're a terrible lecturer. And there's examples here of different ways to phrase that. You need to instead talk about how the specific thing that lecturers have been doing in the class has been a bit disconcerting, and that you need to have a different thing. So B is balance. Someone asked me what B was. B is for balance. Again, this is all in the course rep handbook. You don't need to remember this off the top of your head. And then E is for effective feedback overall. So communication with students is the next one. So ensuring that you have a couple of things in place to ensure that you have good communication with students is really helpful. So the first one is boundaries. Ensure that you have boundaries between yourself and students. So don't rely on something like Facebook too much. You can use Facebook if that's something you want to do, but generally speaking, it's bad to combine, say, a personal platform with a professional one. As much as you can, ask people to use the email. They'll be more than happy to most of the time. Practicality. Make sure that you don't ask the students in your class to do anything that's a bit unreasonable or just might be making another extra step that's unnecessary. The email, again, is a great way to go. Downloading a new app or a new way to communicate is often unnecessary and will just confuse people further. Say, having to download WhatsApp or join a WhatsApp group to discuss things might not be the most effective way. Just focusing on those emails is best. And that's also a really good point for accessibility. Accessibility wise, the email is probably the best way to ensure that everyone has access to a problem. And the other problem with Facebook as well is worth noting that international students don't always have access to every type of social media. And indeed, many students in Australia might not have every type of social media. So relying on Facebook or any other one social media platform is not the best way to ensure you reach everyone. And finally, make sure you don't share any course content online outside of ANU platforms, because that could potentially be a breach of ANU copyright. So if you do have a Facebook group, if you do have some form of group where you're communicating with people, ensure it is private, ensure it is only people who are in your course. Otherwise, you might be in breach of copyright, and that's just something to be conscious of. So otherwise, there's some tips on if you do decide to use Facebook, and there's also a Discord example here. If those are things you do want to use, there's tips on how to use that effectively. And I'll let you all read that in your own time. But again, I would stress that emails are often the best form of communication. So I've had a few more questions come through. I'll just quickly respond to those. So someone asked, well, what if there's only one lecturer and you're trying to raise a point and you don't want to say generalized things? That's a little bit difficult as well. But again, that just goes back to moving towards this specific feedback. So saying to the lecturer, oh, I would like more examples, as opposed to you don't use enough examples. One is accusatory, one is negative, one is constructive, and one is positive. So thinking about it like that is the best way. Notably, you don't need to go in and get into a fight and win. You just need a sort of, a steady and mild improvement most of the time. That's how you solve issues with most course conveners. If students don't contact you, that is okay. It's worth noting that you are also students in this class, and you might experience issues that are generalized because you've experienced them, even if other students aren't contacting you. So you should be able to speak about them. There is always the chance that a course is run very well and that you don't have much feedback. If you find the course very well run and no students are contacting you despite your best efforts to promote yourself, then it's probably a good course and you probably don't need to worry about passing on feedback that doesn't exist. But otherwise, yeah, students won't always email you or give you their concerns. It's best to stay sort of conscious of problems that are arising on your own terms as well. So yeah, and then someone asked, would I recommend having a platform to communicate with fellow course reps? I would say it's something that, I've been in courses where there's whole course group chats. It is a good way to get sort of quick feedback. You're welcome to set that up, but just making sure that there's another avenue that people who don't have, for example, Facebook or Discord or WhatsApp, have a way to contact you and have a way to contact you easily. The one thing that everyone has that I always talk about is Waddle. Everyone has a Waddle access because everyone is a student at the university. I would recommend, if you have the interest and capacity and there isn't one already, a platform with which to communicate with everyone is a good way. Oh, sorry, I just read something about this person also asked about fellow course reps. Generally speaking, I don't think you will need to talk to your fellow course reps. It's generally only something you need to do. Sorry, what's been going on my phone. But yeah, that's sort of the basic outline of that. You don't need to communicate with fellow course reps up to a huge degree, I would say. But if you do want to, email is probably the best route. Sorry for that. Couple of things about how else you can problem solve with conveners. So there's sort of a 3-stage referral escalation system that we recommend. I've sort of already walked you through it, but it's worth explaining explicitly. So the first step is clarification. If a student is raising an issue with you, make sure you clarify exactly what the issue is and make sure you have a really good understanding of what the problem is. Don't just come and say, oh, someone was confused in the lecture. Well, that could mean a lot of things. Get to the specifics of what was really confusing, what was not working, where the issues are, and people will be able to ask the whole class for feedback if that is the case. And you can ask the whole class for feedback through, say, something like a Facebook group if you want to. Then you can request a meeting with your course convener. They should always work towards having a meeting with you within 1 or 2 weeks. And you can briefly tell them what the information you have is, advise them of students' views on the matter, noting that you yourselves are students and you're allowed to incorporate your own views as a student into generalized issues. And then you can also, and I think it's best if you can, give solutions where possible. So if something was confusing, say there's 2 lectures that gave different information about an assessment, say, I think it would be great if you could just send an email out clarifying which of the 2 options it is. And that's something that's pretty easy to do. So working to resolve it and doing so in a friendly and approachable manner. This is a very diplomatic issue. You shouldn't be going in looking for a fight or hoping to upset the apple cart or something like that. It's best to do so on good terms and making sure that you are working closely together. In terms of referral, if you can't get a solution, if the course convener isn't responding to emails, if you're finding the situation very difficult, please make sure you escalate that to your college representative. If it is a really big issue and the college representatives are struggling, or you think they might not be appropriate, or even they're not responding to you because they're also students and they sometimes get busy, then you can always email the vice president, the assistant dean directly at the college, the deputy or their deputy deans of education, or even the dean of students. That is another contact that you'll find in the course rep book. That's really good to know. They're another point of advocacy within the ANU alongside ANUSA. So I've talked a lot, sorry for that, but I hope that gives a good explanation. The final thing to note is to stress the importance of our student assistance team. They not only do things like financial grants, which on an unrelated note, at the moment you might be in need of because of the COVID lockdown, because of loss of work and whatnot. Please do contact the student assistance team with that. But also, as we move into the COVID lockdown for the next 2.5 weeks, it's worth noting that that will affect a lot of courses and course conveners. The systems in place should be better than it was the first time the ACT went into lockdown, but as much as you can, stay in contact with your college representatives, with your fellow students, with people like myself about issues as they develop, because the sooner we know something, the sooner we can get to fixing it. And if there's an assessment that has a big problem coming up in a week, well, that gives us a pretty tight timeline to find a solution. So the sooner you can contact someone like me, the sooner I can get to work on a solution where appropriate. It's worth noting that issues like proctorio and online invigilation are something that comes up every semester. Those are ongoing developments, and that's something that, again, is often best handled at my level. So if you're unhappy with how online invigilation is occurring, then you can let me know. And I can't really promise a solution. The ANU is under its own pressures in terms of academic quality assurance. However, it's always good to know, and it's always good to do what we can to try and reduce, say, unfair exam practices and those kinds of things, and to try and find solutions as best we can, noting that different courses have different needs, have different expectations. So yeah, that was a lot of talking from me, but we've made pretty good time, only about half an hour to get through most of the information. I would recommend reading it through. I sort of breezed over a couple of the areas, and you'll again find all the relevant contact details in there. But otherwise, that is most of the information that you'll need. I understand that might not cover everything, which is why I'm more than open to hearing as many questions as people have. You can just pop on and speak. Probably best to use your hand, actually, to raise a hand, just so that way everyone doesn't speak at once. But you're also welcome to just private message me on the direct chat and let me know your question, and I'll do my best to answer it. The final thing I'll say, whilst you have a think, if you do have any questions, is that up till this year, each college had its own college course representative system. That means that you'll find that some courses won't have them and some will, and you'll find that very confusing. This year, I'm really proud that I, along with others, have worked on implementing an ANU-wide course rep policy that should come into effect in semester 1 next year. So the changes won't be seen this year, but it does mean we'll be seeing hopefully a lot of improvements around how we advertise this, the structures around it, making sure that there are consistent timelines for every college, and trying our best to have every course have one, with a couple of exceptions for courses where it's a bit difficult, it's not appropriate. It also means we'll be hopefully advertising all of the relevant contact details and how to contact those people, in what scenarios you should or shouldn't contact people more clearly going forward. ANUSA is working on an escalation guide for all students, including course representatives. That sort of is what's covered in the handbook, but it's going to be hopefully a little bit prettier, hopefully a little less long, and hopefully a lot easier to navigate for all students. So just some interesting changes that are hopefully coming up by the beginning of next semester. And if you do stick around as a course representative, you'll be around to learn about them. But otherwise, I think we're more or less at the the end of most of what was important to cover. I'll put this Zoom up and I'll put the document up, but otherwise I would, I'll stick around for a little while now and answer as many questions as people have. All right, so someone has asked, what would be the best way to tell a student with a personal question that you can't really help them? That is a great question. So the best way to do that is to explain that there are people, you don't need to say anything about yourself and that you don't want to do it or something like that. All you need to say is that ANUSA has people that are really good at helping you with these kinds of problems. And that's when you point them to the student assistance team and you tell them that these people are really qualified and they know all of the policies best and that they're really good advocates and really good advisors on behalf of students, and that they're the best point of call. The more people that know about our student assistance team, the better, because they do a fantastic job and that they're the #1 port of call for all individual issues and personal questions like that. So yeah, don't be ashamed to say that you're just a course rep, that you don't know everything about the university. It's not expected that you read ANU academic policies. They're very long and unnecessarily complex at points, but that's the job of our paid team. And they're the ones who do that best. Someone asked about my experience about surveying what we need to do in terms of supporting students and listening to them. I would say that generally speaking, you are welcome to have, like, say, a Google form or something like that and just get general feedback. You could even ask your course convener to post a Google form that just collects feedback regularly to give direct to you. But I would say that often that's functionally the same as receiving an email. Otherwise, you can do general surveys, such as just asking people to let you know if there's a problem in a Facebook chat. But I would say that that is the best way. I hope that answers your question. Let me know if I don't answer questions. Yep. Then someone asked, okay, where can I get access to recording of this meeting? It'll be on the ANUSA website. So I'll post that link again here. It'll also be in the Facebook group. So in a day or two, once I've probably got better internet outside of where I'm living at the moment, I will post that online, and that'll be a way that you can watch it online on the Facebook event and on the ANUSA website. Oops, sorry, I just DM'd that to someone. I'll send that again to everyone. That's the website where you'll find it. Someone asked, are there other things to survey students for besides what's working in the course and what is not working? I would say that generally speaking, that you want to make sure you keep your role fairly specific and direct. There are some other examples of things that you might need to look into. The course rep handbook mainly just asks about the course related issues. So making sure you're focused on course related issues and what isn't working within that, as opposed to maybe broader questions about the college and those kinds of things. If you do have those broader questions, it's best to escalate them, because that would be the best way to do it. Someone has asked in the group, do we have a Facebook group chat? No, we don't, but we do have the Facebook group event, and that's where I'll post most of this information. So just for your sake, I'll post that. That's where you'll be able to find all the posts. Someone has very kindly asked how my day has been. It has been long and stuck inside, but overall very, very nice and fun, just spending time with my housemates. So thank you. Yeah. Are there any other questions? So if your course convener isn't replying to your emails, make sure you escalate that with the college representatives. And if they don't respond to your emails, then escalate it to me and I will respond to your emails. So if I get feedback from students, so I think that, so yeah, someone's asked, would you bring up feedback that you get with the convener in an email or talk about it in a Zoom? I think that that's something that is pretty variable. Like if you can send an email saying, hi, Professor, I was wondering if we could get this lecture posted online. That's something that you can just ask on email. That's a pretty simple question. If the student's feedback is a bit more sensitive, it's about something that happened, like the way it's being taught, then that's maybe something best to talk about in a Zoom. So that way you're very careful with your words. So you can use your discretion a little bit with that, but there's certainly no reason that you have to go with one way or the other. You can email or you can talk it out over Zoom. But yeah, generally speaking, if it's easy, I would recommend an email. If it requires a discussion, if it requires a bit of a back and forth conversation, I would go to the online discussion face to face over Zoom. Any other questions? Yeah, people are also welcome to head off whenever you wish. I will continue to record these questions if you do want to watch the rest of them. But well, thank you all for coming so far. If you do have more questions, stick around. But yeah.
I do have I do have a little concern. I'm not sure on this, but one of my courses still seems to not have any course representatives. It's not the one I'm the course representative for. It's for one of my other courses. So I'm just here kind of going, who would I raise that to?
Sure. Can I ask?
Because there was no asking anyone in the first day introductory.
Yeah. Can I ask what college that was in?
College of Science. I know it's a biology course.
Oh, okay. That is interesting. Generally, they often do have course representatives. I would say that you could email the course convener directly and just ask about that and say, will you have them? And if not, what's the alternative feedback mechanism? Alternatively, you can just raise that with the college representative and say that you would like to know if there is a course rep or an alternative feedback mechanism in place.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. I hope that helps. So someone's asked about if you do a survey and provide a report and those kinds of things within the class. We don't have any requirements around what that has to look like if you do survey students and those kinds of things. That's something I'm hoping that we can change for next year. But for this year, if you do survey students and you do make a little bit of a feedback report or something like that, that's very much up to you and how you want to do that, noting that you do need to obviously be respectful and careful with everything that you say, and that you remove anything that's potentially offensive and those kinds of things. I would say that it's not necessarily super relevant or even necessarily super effective to maybe construct a whole report. CELTs do exist. Whilst they're not the most useful tools. They do have thresholds that if a course doesn't perform well enough in terms of a CELT, that there's an automatic review triggered by the university. And those reviews are ongoing until the CELTs improve above the threshold. So the threshold's like 50% or something like that of student satisfaction. So that's the best way I'd say in terms of responding with a survey and reports, but you're welcome to do that within your course. I hope that answers that person's question, but yeah, no worries. I don't think I've got any more questions at the moment. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for coming. I think if there's no more questions, I might wrap up around now. Please flag if you do have anything before I do end the Zoom. Thanks everyone for coming. Thank you for your lovely thank you messages. Okay, well, unless anyone else, sorry, I was just gonna say, unless there's any other questions, I'm probably gonna end the Zoom right now because I'm not sure if anyone who's left is still on their computer. But thank you all for coming, and just email me if you do have any other questions or comment somewhere in the Facebook events. So yeah, thanks everyone.